Okay, everyone, let's grab our seats. It's officially 8:30 p.m. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Welcome home. My name's Ron, I'm an alcoholic. How you doing? With that, any quick announcements? Do we have any quick announcements to do? This group has a treatment center commitment every Sunday night. We're looking for speakers. The only requirement is that you have a pulse and are willing to serve God in AA, and we will fit you in there, and they will be very grateful. I don't know if you've ever been in a treatment center, but you know how important it is, people coming from the outside carrying a message of hope and recovery to you, and bridging the gap between the treatment center and getting back here into the real life of AA on the streets. Hard time on the streets, you got to rehab. And so if you're willing to do that, see us after the meeting. With that, I think we got the world's greatest chairperson all the way from Southern Canada. Let's welcome Kara.
Good evening, y'all. My name's Kara, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Welcome home. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, Doylestown, PA. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. and speaker at 8:30 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of all Alcoholic Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
I'm Biff. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm an alcoholic.
Welcome. In the back, with the white hat. Welcome, Ann. Welcome, everyone. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Nick?
My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. During the 7th tradition, we have a QR code for Venmo on the back table, or I have one on my phone. I'll see you after the meeting. Also, I have an ongoing commitment for men only on Tuesday nights in Sellersville at a recovery center. If anyone's interested in coming to speak, share a message of hope, come see me after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Our sister group is a Big Book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. just up the street at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, Doylestown. Coffee is on at 6:15. Please join us. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations, the purpose of big books to help those who cannot afford them. Put donations in the jar on the table marked big books and CDs. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there. Join our Facebook page to keep informed, and you can share upcoming events and meetings. Now I would like to introduce a good friend of mine, Thomas. He's going to come up and read Just for Today, our prayer recovery. Let's give him a warm welcome. Woo!
Good evening, everyone. I'm Thomas, and I'm an alcoholic. And welcome home. This is the Just for Today prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And with that, please help me welcome up Michael for the preamble.
Okay, my name is Michael, and I am an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any cause. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And now I'd like to bring up Mark to read the 12 steps.
Hey guys, I'm Murph and I'm an alcoholic. 12 steps. Come up to read 12 steps. 7 tradition every
12 steps.
12 steps, I'm sorry. AA 12 steps of recovery. We admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made a direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, and having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. And then help me welcome Kara back on up.
The 7 tradition states, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. And at this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover food, rent, big book CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce the speaker as a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Let's welcome Tim F. He came all the way from Baltimore, Maryland. Woo!
It's the Michael Buffer at AA right there. My name is Tim Fritz. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Man, it's great to be here, and it's a real honor to be asked to do anything for AA. Thank you, Ron, for having me. And this was a special day for me for a couple of reasons. I got to spend some time with my aunt and my uncle who live right down the road here in Philadelphia, and he was the demonstration of what these 12 steps will do for you if you do this work for my whole life. So it's good to be able to sit down and share a meal with them and thank him for being a demonstration of AA. I have a home group. It's the Firing Line in Baltimore, Maryland. We meet on Tuesday nights, and we go line for line through the first 164 pages of this book. The speaker shares on their experience as they read, and then on the last Tuesday of every month, we have an hour-long speaker talk, usually somebody coming in from out of town. And if you're ever in town, we'd love to have you. that group is super special to me, and it's really an honor to be a part of that group. You know, it feels a lot like this one. You know, it feels like a real pocket of enthusiasm in that place, and for me, in and out of these rooms for a good 20 years before I finally realized that my way wasn't going to work. You know, to walk into a place like that or like this is a blessing for a guy like me, you know. The other piece that's special to me about being here tonight is my sobriety date is 3/17 of 2023. Certainly wasn't my first sobriety date. I've been trying to do this for a long time, my way. And speaker tapes were a really, really big part of the urge to continue doing this work that I continue to experience, which I now see as God's grace. And this group's tapes were constantly in my earbuds as I walked my dog. So thank you for that. Thank you all for that. So for me, you know, I grew up super uncomfortable without words to be able to describe it. Until I started to come into these rooms and talk to people with a real solution, I never really understood or could articulate what it feels like in my skin to be sober. And I always thought that the alcohol was the problem. And it's just not true. You know, what it feels like to be sober without a solution for me is almost unbearable. You know, and what happened is, you know, as a young kid, I can remember, like, I had an experience about a year ago with my son, who's 6 years old now, that in the moment I didn't realize, but looking back after I walked out of his school, it occurred to me what had happened. And I'll share it with you real quick. Basically, you know, I'm married to an introvert, right? You know, and he was 5 at the time, and he's going to kindergarten, and it was like a super exciting day for everybody in the house. He was excited, my wife was excited, and we're driving him over to school, and I got real quiet. And like, my wife immediately knows, like, if I'm not upbeat and talkative and making jokes with him, with Easton, and carrying on, like, something's wrong. So of course she's like, well, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing, everything's fine, I don't know what you mean. And I couldn't even put my finger on it. We get over to the school and we walk in, and it occurred to me as we walked in the school that I was nervous for this kid. And I adore him, right? So we're walking into school, and I start to think back to what it was like for me walking into kindergarten. And this is 7, 8, 9 years before I put a drink in my body. And I can remember being so uncomfortable walking into kindergarten. I remember seeing, like, the kids all sitting on that little magic carpet. They all knew each other. They definitely didn't want to get to know me. All of the parents are over here. They're all talking. They don't want to know my mom. And we just need to get out of there, you know. I threw a fit. I was not interested in letting her leave. And I mean, I could feel it in my soul how unbelievably uncomfortable I was that day. And I was scared that kid was going to do the same thing. And we walk in, and he walks over to the magic carpet, and he sits down, he starts playing with some kids. Like, we say hello to some parents, and then I walk over to him, and I'm like, are you all right? And he looks at me, he calls me bro. He looks at me, he's like, bye, bro. all right, man. And I walk out of there and I turn to my wife as we're walking out and I'm like, let's go get a coffee. She's like, what just happened here? You know, I walked in there and you know, and she knew something was wrong. And like, by the time we walk out of there, I'm ready to go celebrate. And I look her dead in the face and I'm like, he's not an alcoholic. He don't got what I got. And that's what it was like for me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember when it occurred to me that I was uncomfortable in all sorts of different situations growing up, but like, my chest was tight and I could feel that I just wasn't okay from a really early age. And, you know, I couldn't articulate it at that point, and I also didn't have, you know, I didn't have anybody else to compare it to. I just assumed everybody felt like I did, right? I got into soccer and felt somewhat a part of in sporting events, but that was like really the extent of it for me. You know, school I didn't seem to do real well. And it's just, you know, it was just a lot of discomfort, you know? And now the way I could really explain it is like, I just felt like a real conscious separation from you and what I now know to be God my whole existence until I get here. We get to a point where, you know, I'm getting ready to go into high school and I'm turning 13, 14 years old, and my mom and dad drive up the street to go to dinner. He was a horticulturist. There was this big, you know, conference downtown, and they drive up the street and they say goodbye to us. We're outside, like my sister's watching us for the weekend or for the night, and you know, they say, we're going to dinner, we're going on vacation tomorrow, we love you both, we'll see you guys tomorrow. And I woke up that next morning and my mom was home, but my dad had dropped dead of a heart attack in that restaurant that they went to. And I had never felt more uncomfortable in a moment than in that moment. Now, I was close to my dad, and it just, I didn't know what was going to happen or what we were going to do or how I was going to live without my dad. And you know, I remember 30 or 60 days later having that first drink, and it made it all better. You know, I finally felt okay after the 30 or 60 days post him passing away, and I hung my hat on my dad dying for my drinking for 25 years after that, which today I know is a lie. And what happened is that I acquire an ID at like 15 of a 6'1" Samoan man from Hawaii. I'm living in Baltimore and they're serving me alcohol with a Samoan dude's driver's license. I'm the only one of my friends who has an ID. And when I talk about I had arrived, like, would they celebrate me when I would walk into a party? They were like, this dude's going straight to the liquor store for all of us. I was the man. So early on in my life, I'm driven by fear of what you think and how I feel, and to almost in a split second, not only do I feel okay and a part of, because alcohol does for me what nothing else ever could, but now I'm driven by my ego because people want me around because now I have this ID. And I ran real hard through high school. You know, by the time I got to college, I'm trying to control my drinking at 18. By the time I got to college and all the buddies that I'm meeting in college are starting to drink, I'm already pretty much all done. or at that point really trying to start to figure out how to control it. You know, the great obsession of this alcoholic is to one day be able to control and enjoy his drinking, which was never anything I ever could do. I can do one or the other. That's it. You know, if I got to control my drinking, I'm certainly not enjoying it. And if I'm enjoying it, there is certainly no control. And I never understood what was wrong with me. You know what I mean? Like, I knew I drank harder than everybody else. I mean, that was pretty clear. You know, at 16 years old, I'm buying 6 packs of Rolling Rock and dumping Bacardi Limon into the beer and drinking it in my mom's basement. And I've never drank and not blacked out. That certainly doesn't make me an alcoholic, but you would think that that would be some sort of a red flag to a 15-year-old kid. You know, when I start to get into other things, and then I start to participate in distributing other things, and now I'm even more the man in my mind, right? Like, my ego drove me through life for years. And I get to college, and I start playing this game of control. And you know, I would drink myself into almost failing out of school, and then I would stop, right? Because back then I had the ability to just stop. But the real truth is that I could never stay stopped, you know? What it looked like was I would stop, I'd be all right for a couple of weeks, and then that restless, irritable, and discontented feeling would start to overtake me, and I would be so uncomfortable that now I'm searching for some sort of a solution, and I'm in the psychiatrist's office at the school, like, I need whatever you got. You know what I mean? Like, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that, you know. And I've spent 15 minutes with the woman, and I'm demanding some sort of pill, like, fix me. And that, you know, like, that's it, right? That's my problem. My problem is not the alcohol, and it never was. My problem is what it feels like to be sober, and it's intolerable for me. So I would at that time, I'd get my grades back up, right? And I was on the 5-year plan. I went to Shippensburg University, and every time I drive into Pennsylvania, I'm like, I bet you they don't even know I'm in Pennsylvania right now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure when I graduated, they were like, thanks for your money, sir. You can have the degree, but please don't ever come back. And I would go like a year of drinking and almost destroy my life and fail out of school, and then I would just stop, take all these pills that they would give me to try to treat my alcoholism, which never worked, right? There's no human power I ever tried that even came close to what these 12 steps have done for me, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I tried every human power I could possibly come up with before I came to you guys. That's a fact. And I would make it about 8-9 months throughout the year, and then by the summertime I was drinking again, and then I would start and I wouldn't be able to stop by the time school would come around, and then I would almost fail out of school, and it was like year on, year off, year on, year off, year on, year off. And by the skin of my teeth, I walk across the stage after 5 years with you know, a simple degree and $100 grand worth of debt, and I sail off back to Maryland, and first job I get out of school is this Enterprise rent-a-car gig, and I'm pretty sure that when they're talking about we'll come pick you up, they're not talking about sending the dude that's been drinking Southern Comfort since 5 o'clock in the morning to do that. So I'm going to pick people up, and I've been drinking all morning, and it's just what it looked like, you know? That's what it looked like. At 29, I end up living in a buddy's basement, and I don't got much, you know, because like I have like a little job, and I can make it some days, you know. Other days can't get out of bed, and my word doesn't mean anything, and principles and morals are not anything that I live by or even really have in my mind what those might look like to me. I go through another breakup, right? Because I'm really good at getting into relationships, but usually anywhere around 3 to 6 months, people start to see like how I drink and the way I live. And then they, that's not a life goal for them typically, right? So I end up with another broken relationship, and I end up drinking at it, which is what I do for years, right? I drink at this relationship, and over the course of about a 24-hour period, I drink a half gallon of Rumplemints, and I fall in my buddy's house, and I break a bunch of his furniture, and he's doing well in life and saving his money for things like furniture, which I instantaneously, a week after he buys, break, and he's like, you need to either go to treatment or you need to go to the hospital. And I go to the hospital, and this is like my first real experience of this thing progressing and me being completely powerless. I go to the hospital, and I walk into the emergency room, and they take me back, and this well-meaning doctor comes back, and he's like, Mr. Fritz, are you trying to kill yourself? Like this, psych doctor or whatever. I was like, no, sir, I just overshot the mark, And he's like, well, you have a 0.48 blood alcohol level. If you have one more drink today, you're going to die. And I was like, yeah, I definitely wasn't trying to kill myself, I certainly wasn't real happy with how I was living, but I So I stay there for 12 hours, and they give me the IV Ativan, which I love so much when I go to the hospital, which I've done a bunch of times over the course of my life. And I get out of there, and I go to this pharmacy to fill up this prescription for Librium, right? Like, that's how they always send me out of those places. And I walk into the pharmacist, and she's like, okay, hang tight, I'll have it filled for you in 15 minutes. And I don't got 15 minutes to feel better, I drop that prescription off. She says 15 minutes. I say I can feel better in 5. I'll be right back. And I walk out the door, I get in my car, and I drive to the liquor store, and I get a pint of 99 bananas, and I drink that on the way back to the pharmacy. I don't remember making a decision to get into that car. I don't remember making a decision to buy that bottle. I don't remember paying for it. I don't remember drinking it. But I do remember 3 days later, I wake up in the first treatment I'm in. And, if you had asked me when I left that hospital that morning if I was going to drink, I would have told you no, and I would have 100% passed a lie detector test. I was convinced there is no way I'm doing this. And I didn't make it 2 hours. So I go to that treatment center, and I do what they say to do, right? They're like, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor and work the steps. I'm like, got it, 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't need a sponsor, and I'm definitely not working those steps. So I go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and for a guy like me, like, I just sit in meetings and don't take any action, and I get sicker, And I'm like, this thing don't work. Y'all are all lying. And so I go to the 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't get any better. And then that's the only 90 days in a 29-year career of me drinking and putting other substances in my body that I was sober in conjunction with them. Like, that's the length of my entire sobriety of 29 years before I finally get here 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I was on the marijuana maintenance program there for 9 years, right? Because when I went to treatment, I was like, I just need to get some stuff and I'll be fine. Like, I need some stuff. Like, I went to treatment because I lost the relationship. I'm living in my buddy's basement. He was clearly overreacting about me breaking all his stuff. Like, we could have just got new. And I'm like, I'll go to these meetings. I go for 90 days. I don't feel any better. And then I go on the marijuana maintenance program. And then I make myself a promise. I'm not going to drink. I need to get some stuff. And I was sure, if I get the stuff, I'll be fine. And when I relapsed 3.5 years ago, I had 6 rental properties, a 5-bedroom house in Bel Air, Maryland, which is similar to out here, 4 cars, a boat, and a wife, 2 little kids, and I was dying internally. You know, what I have materially makes no difference to me. Nothing materialistically ever treated what is wrong with me. And that was terrifying. Because what happens is that now I don't have a reason why I'm like this. I don't have an answer. And I remember sitting in my basement. I had spent close to $100 grand over the period of that small relapse. You know, investing in nonsense and buying out just chaos. You know. And I remember sitting in my basement thinking to myself, like, how did I get here again? You know what I mean? How did I get here again? And I walk upstairs and I wake my wife up from a dead sleep at 10 o'clock at night, and she had been breast cancer free at this point for about 2 years. So as soon as she beat breast cancer at 41 with our 2-year-old son, after 9 years and her never seeing me drink, I decide that I'm going to have a drink and I can do it, right? And we all know what happens from there. And I have one, and I can't stop. And next thing you know, I'm waking her up, and I'm telling her, like, it happened. I drank, and I need to go to treatment. So I wake up in treatment the next day, and I went to this place called, it was right up here in Jersey, and great spot, great people. And I met a man that was armed with the facts about himself, who was willing to tell me the truth for the first time in my life. You know, I'll always be eternally grateful to Chris Brennan. He apparently has been running around the Philadelphia and Jersey area doing this for quite some time. Because in the first year that I was back in these rooms, and I would run into people all the time. They'd be like, "Chris Brennan did that to you too?" I was like, "Yeah, you know." And he sat me down and he was like, "You seem like you really want to get well." And I'm like, "Look, man, I got nothing. I don't understand why this keeps happening." And he was like, "I'm gonna ask you 3 questions. Are you willing to answer them honestly?" I was like, "Sure." He was like, "When you start, can you stop?" And I was like, "No." Then he asked me, "When you stop, can you stay stopped?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. I'm sitting here right now. I didn't have a drink for 9 years." And then he asked me, "When I drink, do I have any control over what I put into my body?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. All of it." You know what I mean? And he was like, "You want the good news or the bad news?" I said, "I'll take the good news." He was like, "If you do all 12 of these steps and help other people, your life will never be the same." And I was like, "All right, cool. What's the bad news?" He was like, "If you don't, you'll die alone." And I believe him. I believed him then, and I believe him today. he gave me the phone number to a man that sponsors me today named Jack. I'm super grateful to him. He has never not told me the truth about what I suffer from. And I got into action quick because I know I didn't have a lot of time. I went through these steps in 90 days when I got back from treatment, and truth is my life has never been the same. I start writing, and he gets me clear on this first step, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, you're 100% right. I am screwed. I am always going to drink again. Always. I had no proof otherwise. He would ask me pointed questions, and I would just look at him and be like, got me there. And so I get into writing, and I start to see, right, like I have this magic edit button in my mind where when I think about circumstances or resentments that I carry or things that I feel about how things went, like I have a way as like on the fly as I think about them to edit them to make them fit my narrative. When I start writing and I'm putting this on paper, what I'm left with is the actual truth, the real truth. And I start to write that fourth step, and I start to see myself for who I actually am, not who I think I am. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't want to be this dude anymore. If you had put 10 people in a room before I went to treatment 2.5 years ago, I don't think I told the truth to a single person for 20 years. Like, you could have put 10 people who all swore they knew me inside and out in the same room, and it would have been chaos. You know what I mean? Like, every single one of them would have had a different story on how I make money, what I do for a living. I mean, it was just dishonesty everywhere. And over the course of those 9 years, I burned up just as much stuff looking back. Then, the unmanageability when I'm drinking is real clear. But looking back at those 9 years, like that was equally, if not more, unmanageable. It just looked different. Burned up a marriage, had a kid thinking a kid was going to fix me. I'll stop for her. And so I sit down, I do this fifth step with a man, and I got real clear on who I was and what needed to happen next. And I felt a real sense of peace coming out of that fifth step. And I sit with 6-7, and he laid out quite a bit about where my defects are in my life, what they look like, and how I'm driven by fear, and the level of delusion that I live with, and the dishonesty and inconsideration that I have for other people, the selfishness that I live with, and the way I show up in this universe. And I get into these 9-step amends, and he's talking about making direct amends, and I'm like, what do you mean direct? Like, I have to go sit with these people I don't like? And he's like, yeah, but it's all your fault anyway. You did, he got clear. He was like, it's going to be fine. Like, in our sponsorship family, we're not going to apologize. We list our harms out, and I sit down with these people eye to eye, and I ask them if there's anything I missed and what I can do to make it right. And then I take those actions. And that's really where I started to get free. And I caught fire for this thing. And we quickly go through 10, 11, and 12. And over the course of the last year, my sponsor was on pretrial release for years and years and years. And in the back of my mind, I think I knew that, while I had started to develop this relationship with God, I also relied on Him a lot. And I knew He was going away. And I start working with guys, and remember hearing my first fifth step with a man, and I remember dropping him off, and the power that was flowing through me in that moment. He got out of the car, and I drove 100 feet up the street, and I burst into tears. And it's just been a really powerful experience. And he goes, Jack goes to prison, and I go visit him, and what I expect when I walk in there the first time to go see him is a stressed out man. Like, that's the truth. And it was the opposite. I mean, he was more free than 90% of the people I see on a day-to-day basis, and it really occurred to me, it's like, I need to get closer to this power. And I start to really get tightened up with my 10 and 11 disciplines, and I remember hearing a tape by Mark Houston, and he was like, you say God is the most important relationship in your life, yet you can't even make 5 minutes for him in the morning. And if I gave God 5 minutes in the morning before Jack went away, that would be a lot. So I start spending about 45 minutes doing a couple of different things, doing some reading, and I start to really get connected to this power. And I start to have a whole new experience with it. And over the last few months, I understand now why. Over the last few months, Jack came home, we got back into action, right? I was working with a lot of guys, and I still continue to do that, but I had started to slacken some of the other legacies. I hadn't made an amends in probably 8 or 9 months. I had about 15 left on my list, and we sat down when he got back, and he was like, where's the unmanageability in your life? So I gave him a couple bullet points, and he said, how many amends do you have left? And I was like, about 15. He was like, go ahead and send all those approaches. And, and we start having this new experience. And one of the amends that was really heavy on my heart was, I used to talk to my dad all the time when I was a kid. And then I just stopped, My will was enough. And so I set out to go make this amends graveside with my dad. And I didn't really think, and I never know. Like, that's the truth, right? It's like, I got all these ideas and they're never real. I'm usually wrong when I set expectations to things. And Jack tells me to call me when I get to the cemetery, and I do. I pull up, and I have all these bullet points written out on this card like I do with every other amends. He's like, what you're going to do is I want you to think about him. I want you to see if you can get close to him. I want you to think if you can remember his voice and what he smelled like. And then I want you to get quiet for 5 minutes and then call me. So I did that. I get quiet. In the first 10 seconds of me being quiet, I get this flood of emotions of all these things that I need to catch him up on and talk to him about. And I call Jack, and he picks up the phone, and I just burst into tears. And I go up and I lay down on top of my dad's grave, and I start to get ready to lay out these bullet points. And the first thing that comes is not one of the things that I wrote. What I said was, Dad, I have some things that I need to make right with you. But before we get into that, for 20 years, I blamed my drinking and my drug use on your death, and hid behind it. And I want you to know that that's a lie. I am not an alcoholic because you had a heart attack when I was 13. I'm an alcoholic because I have a physical allergy to alcohol, and when I put it in me, I can't stop. Then when I get stopped, I have a mental obsession based on how I feel sober, and I can't stay stopped. That is the truth. And so I sit there and I talk to him about the harms, about living dishonestly in my work life, and breaking the law with his last name attached to me, and knowing that he would not approve. I talked about how I didn't keep up with my siblings and didn't do right by them or take care of my mom the way that he would have had me do. And I talked quite a bit about finding my purpose here and working with other men, and what that looks like today, and what has happened to me as a result of doing the work that's laid out in this book, and how much my life has changed, and how I'm seeking to be a better brother, a better son, a better husband, a better dad. Then it started to rain. And just like, I'm like, all right, I've been here for 30 minutes, it's starting to rain, I should just get up and go back in the car. And I went to stand up, and I could hear that man's voice in my mind say, will you just sit with me for another few minutes? And I sat back down, and it was by far the most powerful amends that I've made, and I've made a bunch. It was like this deeper level of connection to God, to my dad. There's just something so much bigger here happening. Like that's the truth for me. As a result of doing this work, what has happened for me is that my exterior circumstances, they don't play any factor in my emotional natures. I remember going through the unmanageability aspect of the first step with my sponsor as he was reading me the bedevilments and asking me these questions, and I'm like, yep, check. Can't control my emotional natures. Prey to misery and depression. Like, I'm all of it when I come in here. 30 days sober or whatever out of treatment. And in the last 2 months, my wife beat breast cancer in 2022. She got sick in 21. She went to a routine doctor's appointment 3 weeks ago, and they found a 4-centimeter mass in her that they removed yesterday. And Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll find out what we got to do there, 2 weeks from Wednesday, I am walking into a courtroom for a trial with my ex-wife to try to get a judge to allow me to see a little girl that I was close with until 2 years ago when she was picked up and moved away from me, that I've only seen twice in the last 2 years. And all of that is happening over the course of these next 3 weeks. It's interesting, like, my job is clear today. The top of 63, it says, God will provide what we need if we remain close to Him and perform His work well. I am real clear today. My job is to stay close to God and help His kids. If I do those two things, He will provide me with what I need. That's been my experience since I did this work. I'm not worried about what happens in this court case. I am not worried about what happens with my wife. We will walk through whatever God puts in front of us with God. Because I am real clear. When I try to manage my life and the things around me, I only cause harm. That's what happens. As a result of getting in those amends, I got on the phone with an IRS agent in the midst of my last run. I got a letter from them saying that I owed them $15,000. And I was like, man, I ain't got it. And I finally get the willingness. Jack's been away for about 6 months. At this point, I'm working with Cleo, basically. I'm like, yeah, I need a 10-step. And, she suggested to lean back into some of these amends, this financial stuff that was sitting out there. And I do. I call this woman, this IRS agent, and I just get honest, I say, look, I got that bill that you sent me, and I know you put a lien on my house for $15,000 because I ignored it. And I was wrong for ignoring it, and I want to make it right. What can I do to make it right? She was like, are you a member of AA? I was like, as a matter of fact, I am. I am trying to make an amends to you right now. And I spent 30 minutes on the phone with this IRS agent talking about when she was 15, her father got sober, and AA saved his life. And she got her dad back. And I told her about my journey and what had happened to me and how much my life had changed. And it was a beautiful conversation. And the last thing I said to her was like, okay, well, what do I need to do to make this right with you guys? Like, I don't ever want to drink again. And she was like, you're going to get a letter in the next 3 to 6 months, and you'll know what to do from there. And I was like, okay, well, thank you so much for your time. She said, no, thank you for calling and sharing your journey with me. It's good to know that you AAs are still doing what you're supposed to be doing. I was like, all right. And I hung up the phone and I was like, did I just have a 30-minute conversation about AA with an IRS agent? God is wild. And a couple weeks ago, I went to court with a man that I'm working with who's really been doing this work, and he's having an experience. And he had something incredible happen to him in court, and he was as clear as I am that was zero of him and zero of what I said to a judge, but ultimately all God. And I got home and I was elated for him and just fired up about what God is doing in the man's life. And I walk into my living room and there's a letter from the IRS sitting on the table. And I was like, all right, prepare for wind to leave sail. And you would think I trust God at this point, right? And I open up the letter, and the letter is is a lien release certificate from the IRS and from my township. That $15,000 I owed from 2012, and with that was a letter from the agent that says, your $15,000 bill has been satisfied with the IRS. Thank you for calling. Here, for your records, is a certified copy of the lien release from your house. It has been removed. Have a good day. I don't know. I don't know how that happens. You know? All I know is that the more fear I walk through, the bigger God gets. You know? I heard somebody say in a speaker tape one time, fear is a 1,000-mile wide lake that is 1 inch deep. You just gotta walk, you know? And today I don't let fear settle in. You know, we just walk through it. Which is why, regardless of this court case or what's going on with this IRS woman and her wiping this thing clean and this stuff with my wife, it's like, I know I'm safe and protected. I know I am. And I came here to not drink. You know? And the level of freedom that I experience today as a result of these 12 steps and taking action on a consistent basis here is an experience that I almost missed. I almost missed it. So, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. That's all I got. Thanks.
All right, good evening. My name's Brian. I'm an alcoholic. First and foremost, I want to thank Tim for coming out here tonight, delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery to our group here. A couple quick announcements, and then we'll wrap up the meeting. We always have food and fellowship for this group starting at 8 o'clock every week. As Ron and Nick mentioned, we're all about service. We have H&I commitments if you're interested in that. See one of us after the meeting. If you want to help out with some service right after the meeting, we can always use help putting the chairs away. It's customary for us to thank our speakers. They do come here on their own time and expense. So usually we form a line in the front here and we thank our speakers personally. Thanks to our greeters, our readers, and most importantly, let's thank our speaker, Tim, one more time. And if you do care to join us, we have a beautiful way of closing down the meeting. We are going to circle up. We will close with our Lord's Prayer. We will close down here with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside of these rooms, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,